Welcome to the Quantum Healing Oracle. In this channel, I use astrology and tarot to bring forward reflections that can help you live your most authentic and empowered life. My name's Pan. If you're new here, feel free to like and subscribe. Today, we're going to do the third video in a three-part series around my interpretation of the Saturn Neptune conjunction. If you haven't seen those first two videos, I'd recommend that you check them out. There's links to them in the description box. And today we're going to go one layer deeper into the energy, and we're also going to do a tarot reading and see what it wants to show us. So as always, please only take what resonates. These are my interpretation of the energies. Nothing's ever set in stone. There's always multiple paths for you to take at any given time, and it's up to you to choose the path that works best for you. So in the first video, I discussed kind of the mechanics behind how quantum consciousness accesses the field of potential and then uses vibrational resonance in order to shift into the reality it aligns with, or the reality that it prefers. And in the second video, I unpacked how our relationship with external authority, shifting out of this older age, is leading us into a newer age, which is based more on acting from an internal authority. And so in this video, there's one last piece that I want to share, and it came through really clear and strong this morning in meditation. Because as a lot of people have come to find out about the law of attraction, they believe in manifestation, this has been a dawning awareness within the collective. And I feel like there's some nuances to that not everybody understands the exact mechanics as to what's happening, and they can miss certain components that are vital to really engaging this process completely. And so that's why I feel so inspired to kind of really do a deep dive on this energy at this time, because it's really showed me how to expand my own awareness around it and just to understand the dynamics of what quantum shifting and manifesting is actually all about. So what I was shown this morning is I talked in the second video about how when we are coming from this world of understanding external authority growing up, and we're learning to step into a new way of being, which is operating on an internal authority, where we're choosing to do what's right for us and not making our choices and determinations based on what others may want for us, and how those internal authority choices can be made in frequency on a spectrum between love and fear, from a higher frequency to a lower frequency. So in essence, it sounds simple, and it is, to choose a higher frequency, to align with internal authority and shift into a reality that you prefer. However, the nuances that are kind of baked into this are that a lot of times we are just vibrating in a higher frequency naturally, but there are these specific times where we're pulled into a lower frequency, and we're kind of unconscious that we're being pulled into that lower frequency, and we don't really see any other option or any other choice. And so what I was being shown is that kind of the elevation of our awareness and our consciousness is like a hot air balloon, and it's naturally built to float, and it's built to rise, but it has these sandbags that are kind of holding it down. And so that's kind of how I see the consciousness of the old paradigm, is that we've had these sandbags attached to our balloon, and it's kept us kind of tethered and pinned down into a lower frequency range. And so it's really just identifying how to let go of those sandbags, and then the balloon and our consciousness will naturally rise into a higher frequency. And what they were showing me, that the nuances in understanding this are about how when we're all born into this world, we come in from spirit, and we understand our oneness. We understand our connection with creation. We understand who we are at the level of the soul. But of course, we go through this great forgetting, and we're born into the body of a baby. And that baby has very specific needs. Primarily, it needs to rely on its survival and its care by the parents. And during this time, specifically in the first 7 years, there's a lot of very strong beliefs that are created in the consciousness of each child that basically reinforce this idea that they're a separate being in this physical world and that they're relying on their parents to survive. And the two areas that they rely on the parents most is one, for their needs to be met, their survival and safety, and two, to be loved, to be cared for. And so when I kind of dug deeper into the essence of what those energies represent in consciousness, is that survival is actually the feeling of being sustained. It's the feeling of what is it that's sustaining me. And so through the lens of the child, it's the parents' home, the parents' money, the parents' security and safety that they operate in. That becomes the sustenance or the way that the child is sustained. And the other energy, which is love, is really about approval and validation. So when a child wants to be loved and needs to be loved, what they're really asking for and needing is to be seen and acknowledged that who they are and that the way they are is appropriate and wanted and valuable in this world. And so it's kind of a validation of one's own existence, that the child relies on the parents for that validation. And we interpret it and use the word love, but it's really, we just need them to validate us and let us know that we belong and that it's okay who we are. And as we all know, the parental system has been woven in conditional love. So the idea of having their needs met and being loved as a child are conditional. They're not something that are constantly available. They're conditional based on if the child does what the parents want them to do. And that's kind of how we get hardwired into these beliefs that our ability to be sustained in this world and our ability to be validated in our existence is conditional, and it relies on whether or not we do or we don't do what those external sources or those external authorities have laid out for us to do. And so as we develop and we become adults, now we're challenged to move into a world where we don't have the support and the loving structure of the family in the same way, but we end up recreating versions of those in our world, whether it be through our work, through employers, through school systems, through government structures. We look to those and we put our belief in the external authority into those structures. For validation, we look to our friends, we look to our partners, and we look to other people that then give us that same thing that we had when we were younger. And now, the issue with this is that because these things have been hardwired to be conditional, they need to be re-upped all the time. They need to be reinstalled as being met. That's why the idea of like living paycheck to paycheck is that you will survive when you get your paycheck, but then you need to work the next week to get the next paycheck or you won't survive. So it's kind of like it becomes an addictive cycle of we're always focusing on what it is we think we need to do in order to continue the continuity of our sustenance and be sustained. And likewise, when it comes to our relationships, we're always looking to see how we can make sure that we're loved and approved of by those that are close to us. And then that becomes, again, a repetitive and addictive cycle that's never totally fulfilled in itself. It's just momentarily fulfilled until the next time that it comes up, that it becomes a strong need. And so this is why I'm seeing that, you know, two of the things that are most important to most people as adults is how much money they have and if they have a partner in their life. Often people are looking for the love of their life or someone to be married to. And I just see this as being the evidence that the belief underneath there is that if they have enough money, they never have to worry about the fear of survival again. They can do whatever they want and feel sustained. If they have a forever partner that they're married to, then they're always going to have that validation and approval, and they're never going to feel alone and that they're not worthy again. And so I think a lot of the questing that humans have been unconsciously going through is just trying to secure those two areas of their life through something that is conditional and always in flux and always having ups and downs about whether or not you feel supported and have enough money or you don't, or you feel loved in a great relationship or you're alone. And a lot of people, I think, have been vacillating back and forth in there because that's trying to show us that those beliefs that were hardwired in when we were children are not true, real beliefs about the way creation is. And so oftentimes when people go through, like the black sheep of the family, they have to kind of throw off the idea of being supported by their parents. Their parents don't understand what they're doing. They have to let go of the idea that they're going to be approved of and validated by their parents. And that kind of takes spiritual seekers, begins them down a journey where they begin to understand how to validate themselves and how to support themselves and connect with the universe as a way of feeling sustained. And so I see this is the transition that we've been going through for many, many years. In fact, if we look back to the 60s, we can see when that trend really first started, that people started to reject the idea of external authority in an effort to discover the truth of who they were and begin to express themselves more from an internal authority standpoint. And so I just feel like we're at this juncture now where we've learned a lot about this process. We've learned a lot about who we are. And again, like I was saying in the second video, we're transitioning from this age of time called the cross of planning, which is about community and social structures and fitting in to the whole, into the cross of the sleeping phoenix, which is about individuation, individuality, self-expression. And that self-expression, that shift into the new energy, requires there to be a very strong connection with the internal authority. And so the way I see what's happening now is that any of those places that those beliefs in conditional love and conditional support that have been hardwired into the consciousness that are playing out in the human world are having a lot of pressure put on them, because those are essentially the sandbags. Those are the sandbags holding the balloon from rising. And those are the key points to look to when we are kind of going through our lives and everything feels great, when we get triggered by certain circumstances and situations that draw us into conflict, that draw us into fear, that draw us into separation. That is most likely trying to highlight where those beliefs that were adopted in childhood about the reliance on the government, the reliance on work, the reliance on these systems to be supported and sustained, or the people in your life, the narcissists, the ones who betray and abuse, those are getting called out because those are those beliefs that have been carried forward that are saying, without the government's support and without the partner's validation, I'm not okay. And where the crux of this lives is that when we really step into the truth of who we are, and this is why self-acceptance and self-love and self-care is so important, because we stop asking the external world and those people and those structures to support us and validate us in the same way. We begin to turn that energy inward, and we see that we can support and validate ourselves. And when we begin to have that energy running through our own system in a self-sustained way, we expand into the awareness as that balloon rises that we're not just this individual human in this dangerous world, and that we're vulnerable and fearing for our survival and just trying to be loved anymore. We naturally expand into the awareness that we are in oneness, the entire universe, experiencing itself through the illusion of separation. And when that begins to happen, we can start to see that the true sustenance, what truly sustains us, is actually the entire universe. It's the entire creation that's sustaining us. And it always was. Even when we were children, it wasn't our parents that were making sure we survive and were supported. It was the universe, you see? So that belief structure is out of alignment with the truth of who you are at this higher level. And so the same goes for our relationships. If we felt that we needed to be validated and loved by our relationships, when we begin to apply self-love and self-acceptance, we realize that we are love. We're not even looking to receive love. We are made out of the fabric of love itself. And therefore, that is the universe loving us through our own awareness. And so what I found is that the ultimate truth behind all of this is that in childhood, we've learned a form of conditional love, which is an illusion. And in the way of awakening to the truth, we discover unconditional love. And it's not just about a human emotion that makes you feel good. That unconditional love is literally the fabric of existence itself. Creation is made out of unconditional love. Everything exists as unconditional love. And so our relationship with sustenance and validation end up blending into one understanding, one awareness, and one experience, which is that I'm simultaneously sustained and validated as I am unconditional love. And I no longer need these other structures, these other ideas of separation and illusion in order to know the truth of who I am and experience the truth of who I am, regardless of what is or isn't happening in our lives. So it's kind of like, once you step into that true knowing that I exist within the fabric of unconditional love and I'm eternally sustained and validated, you can let jobs go that you don't want to do anymore. You can let relationships go that don't work anymore. You can even stop longing to have any kind of relationship and just know whatever relationship shows up is the fabric of creation. It is that unconditional love, bringing that validation in the moment in whatever way that it's meant to. And so I feel this is pivotal as we're learning this, because what we're seeing, all this disruption in the external world and in our relationships, is showing us that that way of looking at it through separation, through fear, through those false beliefs is not sustainable. Staying in that lower frequency and continuing to believe that way is not sustainable as we move forward. And it's having us look at those sandbags and letting us know that we do have the ability to drop those sandbags once we see that we're holding on to them. See that those beliefs aren't true, that it was never our parents that were responsible for our survival. And so I was guided this morning to begin a 45-day mindfulness practice as I was receiving this download. And when I plugged it into my calendar, I counted 45 days from now, and it turns out to be Easter. So I feel personally that the collective is in a very strong window of integrating this transition from conditional love and these limiting false beliefs and lower frequencies around survival and feeling approval or validation into this new world of unconditional love and the ability to experience and receive life as it truly is. And so if you're interested to hear about how I'm going to do that 45-day mindfulness practice, stay tuned after the tarot reading and I'll share that. But that was essentially showing me this was the missing component in everything that I've shared thus far about how we're shifting into these higher frequencies and into these different realities, is that it's all fine and good to focus on the higher frequency and the love when we can, and that's natural and easy, but it's really crucial to understand where we're being pulled into lower frequencies because we're uncomfortable, and recognize that that discomfort that we're being drawn into is where we're still operating. We're like anchored unconsciously into a lower frequency of fear and separation. And that fear and separation, that frequency is continuing to show up and manifest in our lives as being what our experience is. And so kind of where this is all going when it comes to the law of attraction and being able to shift into the reality that you prefer is that because of the hot air balloon, we're already shifting into the reality we prefer. The balloon is already built to shift into higher frequencies and become more and more and more aligned with who we truly are. And we don't have to do anything special and do more visualization and practice in any specific way of trying to train ourselves to manifest. What we really need to do is focus on where we're still anchored into those lower frequencies and where those sandbags are still kind of holding our expansion down. And through the experience of being uncomfortable, through the experience of honoring the emotions that come through, and this is why I've been saying that when we see things in the external world that make us feel uncomfortable, instead of just deferring to the judgment and the conflict and the battles that occur there, to bring the awareness and the energy into the feelings and just sit with what it feels like and know this isn't about them in the external world. This isn't about what we think is wrong with the government. The way we shift our frequency is we go into those uncomfortable feelings about how we feel about the government, and we see how that's pointing to that belief structure that we're still anchored into from childhood. And that because it's so uncomfortable, it's a clear sign that it's time to let that go. And I found the trick to releasing these sandbags and these limiting beliefs is that once we see clearly the truth that those limiting beliefs just don't make sense, it's just not who we actually are. Even the belief that it was our parents were the reason we survived as children, like that seems like such a concrete, absolute thing. But when we tap into that deeper knowing of I'm here because I am created in this moment to experience a life on earth. I am a manifestation of the entire field of creation. I'm an emanation of unconditional love. I always have been. That it shows that limiting belief in our survival or in our validation, it doesn't make sense and it's just not true. And just by seeing and examining and feeling how those limiting beliefs aren't true, then they're gone. And so this process can repeat itself because, as you know, triggers and life will continually pull you into uncomfortable circumstances and relationships until you spend enough time looking at what that feels like in yourself, that it does reveal that these are belief systems within you that can be changed. That's, in my opinion, the most grounded and powerful way of making this vibrational shift, so that we understand, yes, we have the ability to manifest whatever we want. Yes, we're choosing to shift into a reality of the life that we prefer. And that's happening by releasing the lower frequencies we're unconsciously anchored into and bringing complete awareness to the process of how our frequency is reflecting back to us every day. So that's what I have about that. So let's take a look at the tarot. Okay, we have hexagram 18. Work in what has been spoiled. Work in what has been spoiled. Healing, correct past mistakes, make repairs, clean up corruption, restore balance, responsible action. Animal kin, messengers, companions. We have Mercury in Sagittarius with discovery. Accountability. And beginner's mind. Okay, so what I'm feeling in this energy, and this hexagram is perfect. This is absolutely what I've been talking about. The healing and the correcting past mistakes and the cleaning up corruption, that's going into those sandbags. That's going into those limiting beliefs. That's understanding that these lower frequencies that we've been unconsciously anchored into has been a making of our own doing. And this is the greatest truth about what I think we're seeing in the world with the government, and how, again, there's so much social unrest and we're focusing on the corruption, and we feel like if we could just get those, evil people out of positions of authority, that the world will be fine. But that's just the way that the life is reflecting back what's going on inside. It's as if life is a mirror, and that that corruption and those circumstances in the external world are reflecting the inner corruption, the internal place where we're misaligned and we're actually in vibrational resonance with that same corruption, because we're operating in the same lower frequencies of fear and separation. And so I found it's actually a great service what the what we would call the disruptive parts or the negative parts of the government authority is showing us, because they're just serving us by showing us that we've carried these limiting beliefs over in our survival and in our separation, and we're putting it on them that they should be responsible for our being sustained. And it's not true. And they'll never take on the role of being the ones that will actually be able to show us that they can and will be responsible for our sustenance, because it's not them. Just like it wasn't our parents that were actually responsible for our sustenance growing up. It's not the government's responsibility for our sustenance going forward. It's up to us to feel that we're sustained by creation. Okay, so here I like that we have animal kin with messengers and companions and discovery. Mercury in Sagittarius. And, you know, Mercury is just really about how it processes information. It processes information, it organizes it in a certain way, and it's able to communicate that information. In Sagittarius, it's all about really understanding the bigger picture, really understanding how everything fits together. So this is kind of, you know, this is where the mind is able to penetrate into these layers that have been unknown and unseen in a clear way. And I like that there's messengers and companions here in between, because it's just showing that we have so much help in revealing this to ourselves. Just like this morning, I wasn't planning on giving this transmission in the beginning of the tarot reading, and I just woke up and it was clear that this is what needed to be said. And so I very much, my practice with presence is to just have space and time to be still and meditate so that I can receive certain pieces of awareness and certain perspectives, and then be able to integrate that in my own life and then share it with others as a service. And this is why the 45-day mindfulness practice came in, because the one step to getting messages and receiving certain downloads is to gain that perspective, and then the next step is to make it real, to actually apply it. Because otherwise, information is kind of just information, but if you take that information and you organize it and you apply it in a grounded way, it creates real change. And so I see this as being a dive into the discovery of self and a way to use the messages and the helpers that we have in order to really dig deep into understanding where we can shift our frequency and take responsible action. And I yesterday in my video, I talked a lot about responsibility. And that's kind of what I'm hinting to here. The ability to respond, the ability to take action in the moment and have the choice to shift into higher frequencies, instead of just feeling that our response is just the way that it is. Okay, we also have accountability in beginner's mind. And, you know, when I was doing the talk yesterday about responsibility, the energy of accountability came up too, because I think that this is where these two concepts have been linked in the old energy. In the cross of planning time, responsibility and accountability were kind of two words for the same thing. So it was like people were saying, you need to be responsible for what you've done. What they're saying is you need to be accountable for what you've done. And that's why there's a lot of this kind of projection and this pointing at those people who are in positions of authority, because there's a call to make them accountable for what most people feel has been a misuse of their authority. And I'm not saying that's a good or bad thing, and I'm not agreeing or disagreeing with it, but what I'm saying is that when we talk about accountability, the only thing we have responsibility, the ability to respond, is to our own accountability. As soon as we're trying to call out the accountability of another or the responsibility of another, we've missed the point. Because this is where this whole external authority will always seek to enforce itself on external authority, where internal authority will simply act within its own presence and its own ability to make changes. There's personal power in internal authority, and that same personal power doesn't exist as long as we're trying to wield external authority. So I see this very much as this is like a whole new skill set that we need to learn when we're looking at other people, when we're looking at the external world, because we can really use this as a practice to look at people we don't like, people we don't agree with, people that trigger us and make us feel uncomfortable. And we can catch ourselves in those places where we're trying to force them to be accountable and force them to be responsible and take responsibility for ourselves and our own frequency. Because as long as we're still forcing another to be accountable and forcing them to be responsible, that's the corruption. That's what needs to be cleaned up in our own field, because that's not a higher frequency resonant vibration to try to force another to do anything. A higher frequency resonance is to allow others to be as they are. This is where that concept of validation comes in, is that because validation's been so conditional, it's like we feel like we're validated in a conditional way. We always need to re-up that validation, and so we treat others that way too. We validate them when they do what we want. We don't validate them when they don't do what we want. And that's actually kind of a subversive misuse of unhealthy control. It's trying to manipulate others through our ability to either validate and offer them unconditional love or not. And this is where a lot of the teachings of Jesus, you know, when it talks about judgment and love your neighbor the way you love God, that's where the truth of that lies, is that we don't need to just love in a way that we can say we approve or condone and agree with what they're doing, but we can offer them the allowance of existence. We can allow them that vibration of unconditional love to learn through their own experiences and have their own journey with their own choices. And this releases the need to judge, because we can feel how, because the universe operates as a reflective mirror for our own frequency, that if they're going to operate in a lower frequency, they're going to get the reflection from their life of that lower frequency. There's nothing that you need to do about it. You can trust this is what true justice is that that energy will always balance itself through each individual's reflection until they can choose their own responsibility for that frequency. But our true accountability, who understand how to see this more clearly from a higher vibrational standpoint, we can shift and choose a higher frequency when we're viewing others. That is us taking our own accountability for our own frequency. It's being responsible for finding a higher frequency to shift into. Okay, so we have the beginning, the center of this reading, Princess of Pentacles, and the Knight of Wands. Okay, so this energy at the center of this reading is the new consciousness is here. This is the new consciousness coming in, and it's coming in strong. And what it's doing, because it's coming in so strong, and when I say new consciousness, what I'm talking about is this is the balloon rising into the higher frequency. We're experiencing an expansion in the awareness of our consciousness. It is purifying and dramatically releasing and shifting out of the equation anything that no longer serves and no longer works. This, and you know, we have the year of the fire horse, and here that we have the Knight of Wands, which very much represents that fire horse energy. And I see this as being a very strong energy of purification. It's like when you set everything ablaze, everything that can't withstand the heat of that fire is going to be burned up and destroyed. But what can't be destroyed by that fire, what can't be touched by that fire, will be left. It will be purified by everything else that is subject to being burned up. And so this new consciousness is basically saying we're shifting into this new way of experiencing ourselves and perceiving the world around us, and everything that is not going to match that higher frequency as we move is going to burn away, and we will watch it leave in whatever way we're going to watch it leave. And that's why I feel like these transmissions are designed to help enter this space of neutrality, to really see how when we release these lower frequencies of fear and separation, we're releasing them for the collective. If we want to see these kind of power systems of external control that have been abusive to be released from our society, we have to release those structures of external authority in our own system. That's the focus. Okay, so here we have the past, Queen of Pentacles and the Three of Wands. Okay, so I love this energy because this has been showing that it's like if you look out and you know you want to create something, you kind of have a blank canvas, right? And you can bring the essence of yourself and feel like, oh, what would I love to create here? What is the world that I would love to create? It's a very nurturing, it's a very feminine quality to be in that creative mode of being like, this is the garden I would love to grow. This is the house I would love to decorate. This is the canvas I would love to make beautiful, right? There's a certain holding space that the feminine energy does for creation because it knows that it's ready to bring something new and something beautiful and something pleasurable. And so this is a foundation energy that is preparing us to apply those colors to the blank canvas. And we know that we really can only go forward and express that which is in true alignment with who we are. This is why integrity and virtue, and we've coined it as morality, but I'd say it's deeper than morality. It's an alignment with the soul that knows what it wants to express. That's what integrity and virtue is. This is the frequency of the soul that I truly am. These are my values, and therefore I will express only that. And so that's how I feel this is the preparation for this new consciousness, is just knowing and seeing that anything's possible, anything can be created, and that we're really only willing to put our energy and participate in creating those things that are truly in alignment with who we are and who we are on the level of the soul. Okay, so going forward, we have the Fortune, Wheel of Fortune, and Five of Swords. All right. So this energy is basically going to say that there are changes that are coming. I think we all feel that. We all know that. The Wheel of Fortune to me is like a journey, a cyclical journey. It's like if you start, on the side of the wheel, it may spin you to the bottom of the wheel, and you feel like you're on the bottom about ready to fall off, but if you hold on to that wheel, eventually it spins it back up to the top. So the Wheel of Fortune shows there's a change in the energy of a cycle, and that if you just stay in the journey, you stay connected to the wheel, it's going to bring you exactly where you need to be. It's really going to bring you more in connection with your destiny, more in connection with, again, that hot air balloon rising into those higher frequencies. This is what's happening. This is where we're going. However, the Five of Swords is saying you'll need to know when to submit your own personal will to the divine will. And will in itself and free will in itself is a really interesting topic, and I'm sure that I'll do more videos and talk about this in the future, but basically our will is the will of the Creator. We are the essence of creation. So what it is we choose and the will that we choose to exhibit is the will of the Creator. In a sense, we're not subject to either, doing right or doing wrong by God. Like that was an old paradigm, external authority, misunderstanding of will. We're here given the ability to choose anything we like. And yet, if we choose the lower frequency, we'll reflect back the lower frequency, which is uncomfortable. If we align with a higher frequency, we'll reflect back the higher frequency, which feels like peace. So the Five of Swords comes in when there's times that say what you think you want moving forward and the will that you feel you're moving forward with is actually in alignment with a lower frequency than you have access to. And because the universe understands that, it will say, go ahead and you can try to do whatever you want for yourself. But this omnipresent force and the will of your soul and the consciousness of your higher awareness is also at play here. And so you have the will of the ego and you have the will of the soul, and they're in conversation with each other. So there's times when the will of the ego is going to be trumped by the will of the soul. And when that happens, we just have to know when to surrender, when to submit, and when to just allow things to unfold, because it will always show you that what you thought you wanted, if you had got that, wouldn't have worked out the way that you thought. So it feels powerful and dynamic that we have this new consciousness coming in. We have this purification energy that's pulling everything out of our system that can't go with us. And it's going to be a journey that's going to take us from one side of the energy to the other. And it's going to force us to surrender what we thought that we wanted and trust that whatever's coming in is going to be in alignment with the higher frequency. And this is what I've been saying in previous videos, that once we understand that we have the ability to make a positive meaning out of anything in our lives, we stop attaching outcomes to our emotions. Meaning we stop saying, well, if I get what I want, I'll feel good, but if I don't get what I want, I won't feel good. And we start saying, I'm going to go forward with what I want, and I'm going to stay in a balanced state and experience as much joy as I can no matter what comes. And just trusting that no matter what shows up is what the universe is meant to show you, and you can make a positive meaning out of it and have the opportunity to consistently and continually shift into a higher frequency and experience more of what you want. There are just times when letting go of this idea of what we thought we wanted can feel challenging, and this may be one of them. Okay, so here we have the internal influences, the sun. External influences, the Knight of Cups. Okay, so this energy is about the internal force here. This is this rise in consciousness that I've been talking about. This is the effect of the light. I've talked about this in previous videos. We're seeing the external reflection of that happening through our sun because of all the solar flares. When the sun emits these giant solar flares and it impacts the electromagnetic field of the planet, not only is it actually visible because we can see the effect in the electromagnetic field, but we all feel the response because it's altering our thoughts, our emotions, and our beliefs. So this influx of light that's coming and pushing on us is, again, putting more pressure on these certain things, these certain frequencies, and these certain limiting belief structures that are ready to be released. And so it's good to feel that this is all, again, this new consciousness is being promoted and it's coming from the inside. And I'll always keep coming back to this idea of use the external reflection to understand what you're experiencing inside. As long as the external reflection dictates how we're feeling inside, we're still kind of getting it backwards. And the external influences is about service. And so what I found to be the relationship between the light and service is that we go through certain things in our journey that are challenging. And we, again, this whole process of discovering our own limiting beliefs, discovering we're more than this physical body, discovering that we're supported by the universe. Like, we go through these kind of initiations in ourselves to expand our awareness and understand the truth of who we are. And then the next step is to offer that understanding and the embodiment of that integrated light back out into the world. This is what completes the circuit of light itself, is the light is born from within us. It pushes through the density, pushes through the blocks, and when it starts to move and exude more fully from our body within our consciousness, then it shows us what we can do in service to the light itself. And it's almost like we understand that we receive the light and we integrate it so we can give it back out. This is the true nature of giving and receiving. And this is why in the future we won't need money and we won't have these economic structures at all. Because once people discover that the true nature of giving and receiving and the being sustained by creation is really about allowing that light to flow through your system and then offering it back out in service in whatever way you decide. In service to another, service in compassion, service in inspiration, a service in assistance. However the light informs you, you feel inspired to share it, completes the circuit of the light moving itself fully through your system and then out into the world to be received by others. And that's, in my opinion, that's what true pleasure is. That's what true fulfillment is. Everything else we've been attaching to what makes us feel good and how we receive pleasure, what makes us happy, has been through that lens of the conditional external authority. It comes and it goes. It's not a constant renewable thing. It's an addictive process that continually needs to be re-upped. But when we get this channel of light coming through, that is then freely expressed in the world, that is that energy and the pleasure that's experienced because of the connection of that circuit is the feeling of true satisfaction, of true pleasure, of true joy. And it's not taken away because it's something that's not resting in the conditions of other people. It's something that is always under our ability to allow it through. Okay, so let's take a look at the gateway. This is the archetype that's wanting to be embodied that leads to the outcome. This is the Three of Cups. This is about abundance. And here we have Mercury in Cancer. So the way I see this energy playing out in this way is that just like in Mercury in Sagittarius, we're using this kind of way of processing information and organizing information so it can be communicated in a way that we understand the nature of our reality in a deeper way. In the gateway, it's about processing and organizing that information to bring comfort and to offer compassion and offer and share the energetic abundance and the emotional abundance and the support that you have access to. So I feel like one of the paths of light workers, we go through these really challenging emotional times and we learn how to navigate through those intense emotions until we find the self-love and we find the compassion of unconditional love within us. And then we can become a conduit for sharing that when others are going through something similar. And we can encounter them when they show up in our lives and they'll tell us the story of what they're going through. And you'll just be like, I feel you, like 100%, like I've been there. Yesterday, I ran into somebody and they're going through something I went through 2 years ago. And I was just like, hey, I feel you. That's super intense. And I went through something similar. And just so you know, you're doing great. And here's kind of what way I see it or how I learned about it. And so this kind of abundance, this emotional, supportive, nurturing abundance and connected to the service is really calling on light workers that have been through these initiations and integrated so much compassion and love for themselves that they move in the world as a conduit for that process for others. That really feels like that's needed because this process of purification that we're going through as the new consciousness comes in may leave a lot of people feeling very dysregulated. And instead of, again, trying to blame external forces for why things are the way they are, we become the solution by offering light and compassion and love through service. Okay, so here we have the outcome. So the outcome is the Empress. I love this. I love this outcome. Okay, so the Empress is the full feminine embodiment of self-worth. This is what I was talking about in the beginning about validation. What we really want when we're growing up is to be validated so we can feel worthy of our existence. And because that love when we're younger is so conditional, that validation is so conditional, we waver through that our whole lives of not feeling worthy and trying to do certain things to feel worthy and then not feeling worthy. That's the roller coaster around conditional love. And when we really step in to embody the full truth of that feminine polarity of unconditional love, which is the fabric of existence, it's the fabric of who you are, it's creation itself, it's consciousness itself, you begin to experience that as self-worth. I am an embodiment. I am the essence of self-worth. I am innately worthy because I am. No, because of this, because of that, no additional conditions attached to it. I am worthy because I exist. I am worthy in my existence as a unique emanation of unconditional love. And when we begin to feel that and run that frequency through our own system, and those belief structures start to really set in, that is a powerful healing transmission just as you move through this reality. Because so many people have experienced that form of conditional love, so many people are wavering on that emotional roller coaster still, that just to walk through the world, even if you didn't talk to anybody or do anything for anybody, and just radiate and emanate that feeling of self-worth and belonging within creation, you would benefit and affect everything in the most positive way. Yeah, so it's really got a strong, this reading has a strong emphasis on basically clean your own house, understand where you're still believing in these limitations from childhood, and allow this consciousness to expand within you and pull away anything that's not going to work for it anymore, and surrender to the ego, to what it thought it wanted, and allow divine will to bring forward this light and this service and this compassion and this vibration of self-worth. That's what this reading is saying. That we're not going through this process just so that we can have something in the world in a specific way. We're going through this process so we can be who we truly are in the world, in whatever way we choose. All right, so let's take a look at just some additional cards here. Six of Swords, Four of Cups, and the Hierophant. Okay, so what this energy is showing is that, yeah, this is the feeling of it's time to move on. It's time to move on. It's time to recognize the old world for what it was. It's time to make our peace with the old world, set our sights on this new world that we're shifting into, understand that we're still going to be doing the work along the way to integrate the pieces that are a little bit out of alignment, but just know you are so guided. You are so guided. You are so supported. You are so held in this transition. And I think that's what most people need to hear, because the instability in the world is triggering all these ideas that we're not going to be okay, that we're not going to have enough money, or the government's going to collapse or do something terrible, or everything's going to fall apart. You know, that's kind of the fear that's kind of bubbling up under the surface of all the social unrest right now. And I feel like the truth of the energy is it's the opposite. Everything's going to expand. Yes, things are going to change. Yes, it may seem like governmental structures or economic structures are going to change, but we're not putting our stock in that as what's supposed to carry us into this new world. If we're still putting our beliefs in this idea, we need money, we need the government, we need whoever to do whatever to help us transition into this new world, that's not it. We set our sights and say, I know I'm entering this new world because everything in my life has showed me the essence of this transformation I'm making is moving into more peace, more self-worth, more abundance, more connection, more love. And by connecting with those frequencies, you are connecting with the truth of all the guidance, all the companions, all the messages that are saying, yes, you are. And not only you think you're making this transformation, you are the effect of the entire creation shifting through your experience. And there's a subtle difference, because as long as we keep thinking it's our job to go through this transformation and we're doing all the hard work, even though it can feel that way, we miss the fact that this is the effect of these energies that are just changing in creation, and we're experiencing them through our unique experience. And when we can broaden our sense to understand how profound and powerful and divine this orchestration is for these changes, then we can rest in those changes more. Even as things become destabilized, even as things fall away, we can rest more and more in that feeling of being sustained and validated by creation, as creation, for the expansion of creation itself. Okay, so here we have attune and recalibrate. Macrocosm. And shadow clearing. That one's going to end up a little off the screen. Okay, so yeah, this is emphasizing this energy of, if you look at it from the highest perspective, you would see that the entire collective consciousness is going through a very strong, very powerful recalibration. Whatever you need to do to bring yourself into a space to allow this recalibration to occur is your primary focus. That's your only job. You can ask yourself, however it is you feel inspired to do it. That's why, for me, this 45-day mindfulness practice, that's my declaration to my own recalibration. That's why I think it came through today. It felt super strong. It's like, okay, we're going to do this. I've already got it set up. It's already begun. So I would recommend, in whatever way that you feel inspired and connected, receive the guidance, receive the messages, prioritize your recalibration. Allow this time, this 45 days or however amount of time feels right to you, to allow this recalibration, allow whatever that needs to change. If you prioritize self-care, and promote self-validation, self-acceptance, whatever needs to come up will come up, and you will have a container for it. If we stay busy and we don't have enough time and, try and just keep up paying the bills and make sure everybody else has what they need, you may miss parts of what is available here. And I know we all have busy lives, and we all have certain things that we've chosen to continue to participate in. And the universe will tell you there's always space for you to create more self-care. There's always time for you to create a relationship with self-acceptance and practice stepping into the vibration of self-validation and self-worth. Because the shadow clearing here is the most important thing that needs to be focused on. That's the purification. The purification, the shadow clearing, from the universe's perspective, it's like it sees and knows everything is changing, and your prime seat, your prime of the show, it's going to happen through you in your own way. And if you prioritize your self-care and your recalibration, you'll give yourself the best opportunity to begin to ride the wave of this incoming season of changing, this season of expansion. Okay, one last card here. We have Dust Devil, moving out of stagnation. The presence of Dust Devil creates a ruckus. Some people are afraid of this chaotic nature, believing that he comes intentionally to stir things up. The truth is, you can't expect this dream ally to behave, to bring niceness, to be clean. His power is in the mess he creates as he calls for you to engage in the full cyclone of life. He represents two aspects to you now: the winds of your outer life appearing to throw you off course, where you assume the world is coming at or happening to you, and the winds that churn inside of you, with the Dust Devil arising from your dreamscape to help you escape the invisible chain shackling you to a barren desert. Stop asking for things to be perfect. Awkward, messy, conflicted, exuberant, and wild is how you shift. Trust this process. The Dust Devil knows what you need, when you need it. Once things settle, you will see the gleaming jewels awaiting your discovery, the wisdom awaiting integration. So I think that confirms a lot of what's come up here in this reading, is that the energy of change is here. It can feel chaotic. It can feel intense. I think what I picked up on a highlight there is it feels like it's coming from the outside. It feels like it's coming from other people, but it's also coming from within. And it's understanding the relationship between how we understand that, what we perceive in the world, and how we experience within. Those are always in dialogue, and they're always pointing to this process of purification. They're always pointing to what is being shifted, what sandbags are being dropped, how the collective consciousness, how the new consciousness is being born. And I definitely see the Easter time coming up as being a resurrection energy, the time of rebirth, the time of emerging new. And so, again, I would just embrace these changes as they come, know what to let go of, what you have control over, what you don't have control over. Give yourself the time to recalibrate, and trust that you're doing amazing. Trust that you're doing everything you signed up to do coming here. What I also picked up when it said is, don't worry about perfection. We're not here to do anything perfectly. In fact, I got this download last night that was like, at the highest levels of creation, everything is absolute peace, absolute love, absolute perfection. And it doesn't change. It doesn't change. It doesn't need to. It is the idealized state of absolute peace and love. And harmony. So we choose to come down in frequency. We choose to slow ourselves down, to detach from perfection itself, because that summons the force of creativity. The force of creativity, the force of inspiration, is the driving mechanism that helps us solve problems and make changes and evolve back towards that ideal of absolute perfection. But it was never meant to just live and be in absolute perfection. Part of us already lives there, and it doesn't change. It's always that way. So embrace the fact that you chose to come here, to slow yourself down, to summon that force of creativity, to go through the whole whirlwind of human drama, just for the sake of summoning that energy that sparks from within that allows you to evolve. And it's not meant to be perfect, but you learn by doing. And so go forward, allow these energies to shift, trust yourself, and continue to bring yourself back into that space of self-validation. Be the Empress, live in unconditional love, and allow everything to come and go as it pleases. Know who you are. Okay. That's all I have for the tarot reading. So I'm going to share a little bit about the 45-day mindfulness practice. So I was guided to write down 2 lists. One is, it says sustained by at the top, and I wrote everything that I feel sustained by in my physical world. Things like my bank account, my clients, the government, money, whatever it is. I just wrote down everything I feel or I think sustains me in this life. And then on another list, I wrote validated by. And in this list, I wrote things like my friends, my creative projects, my service. I can't think of them all right now, but anything I felt, family, that I attach what I feel I'm being validated by those things, and I'm being sustained by other things. And my mindfulness practice for the next 45 days is try to catch myself when I'm still seeing that I'm looking to be sustained by something. We use money for an example. If you think, do I have enough money in my bank account? The question is, I don't know if I have enough money in my bank account. I don't know if I'm going to be sustained if I don't have enough money in my bank account. So let's check the bank account. I check the bank account. I've got enough money in the bank account. I feel better. That's the process. That's the false belief trying to reinstall itself through the experience of you don't know if you have enough money, but you check the bank account and it says you do, so you're good for now. But if you check the bank account a week from now and you didn't have enough money, then you may not be okay. That vacillation, I'm going to try to catch that vacillation and try to eliminate taking action on any of the things I would reach out to do in order to get that reflection that I'm okay. Same with relationships. If I would show up in a certain way for somebody, if I feel myself looking for their approval or validation in a certain way, I might just avoid the relationship altogether. But specifically, it came up through my phone and even news media. Even though I don't watch mainstream news at all, I still do follow certain things government UAP disclosure, or even the solar flares that are happening, or anything that appears as news of something happening in the external world that I feel drawn to get some kind of validation from that. I'm not even going to pull it up. I'm going to try to catch myself anytime I'm scrolling or going to something that is connected to one of those things on the list, and then just disengage from it entirely. And I expect that it will feel awkward and uncomfortable, and it'll probably create the feeling of being bored, honestly. But what I've been guided to do is try to stop looking at it when it wants my attention to try to fulfill itself, and like any addiction, and then just try to say to myself, I'm not sustained by that. I'm not sustained by my bank account. I'm sustained by unconditional love. I'm not validated by my clients and my service. I'm validated by unconditional love. To catch myself looking for it, to repeat to myself consciously that I'm not sustained or validated by those things, and to repeat what I am validated by in truth, and to feel that validation happening within unconditional love all the time. And then to find spaces of resting in it. And the other thing they said, it's important to say, I'm going to rest in unconditional love now. That's not doing anything. That's not trying to accomplish anything or achieve anything or watch anything or distract. It's just, I'm going to rest into stillness and feel how I am resting in unconditional love. And so that's my intention for the next 45 days, just to help me bring more awareness to those pieces that are still attuning and recalibrating. So I wanted to share that with you. So thanks for sticking around. Thanks for checking in and sharing in this energy. It really means a lot to me to connect to the collective and be a part of this amazing shift, this amazing transformation on the planet. If you'd like to support me, there's some links in the description box of how you can do that. And if you'd like to reach out for a personal reading, you'll find my email in the description box as well. Okay, we'll see you next time.